Becky here, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome. I'm so glad that you are here. This is a video that I have wanted to do basically since I started making videos, and I'm finally getting around to it, and it is the Lowland Kids Joggers. Now, they're sometimes called the Slim Joggers, but it is on their website currently now just listed as Joggers. I think they had a name change, but this is one of my favorite patterns for little kids or babies. I believe they have a youth pattern now as well, but this pattern is great for boys and girls, and like I said, from babies all the way up to the bigger kids, as just a jogger pattern. And it also has a shorts version as well, which is great. The shorts are a little bit longer for a girl, depending on what you're looking for, but they do have a little bit longer inseam. They're kind of more like a basketball short style. So if you are looking for that, there's my 2 cents on that. I probably wouldn't use them for a girl unless you wanted to shorten the inseam, which if you do that, then I would omit the pockets. And in this video, I am going to be sewing up the joggers as written in the pattern with the pockets. The one thing that I'm going to be doing differently is I will not be doing binding on the pockets. I'll be doing it as a band, and I will talk about that. I'll talk about how to do the binding. The switch is really easy and simple, and I actually like the look of the band better than the binding. So kind of personal preference on what you want to do. The band is definitely more beginner friendly and easier than the binding. But I will put a link to the pattern down below. I will also put a link to my fabric. I got my fabric from Raspberry Creek, my absolute favorite fabric shop. They have so many adorable prints. They take the guesswork out of pattern and color matching. They make collections that are cohesive, and they're cohesive with their solids, which are great, and they make it really easy of how to find it. So they list like all of the colors in the print in the name of the print so that you can find them. They do also have custom printing, which is great quality as well, but that's a little bit more just kind of what the designers put out. But they're in-house prints and they're ready to ship. In stock fabrics are great, and you can't go wrong with them. I have an affiliate link down below, so if you want to check them out, I would really appreciate if you used my link, because I do get a little bit of kickback for that. I do these videos all on my own money and time, so it doesn't cost you anything to use. But like I said, that link is down there if you want to check them out. But other than that, let's get started. So to get started, we're just going to go over the pieces that we need, and I have everything here except my elastic. And you can see I'm kind of doing 2 different fabrics, but what you're going to need is you're going to have 2 back pieces. You want to cut them as opposites, meaning if you have the right or wrong side together, they are a mirrored image. So like if I opened this up, you can see that this point is pointing opposite directions. And if you lay them on top of each other, they match up. That is so that you have a left and right leg, and you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have 2 opposites of your front leg, and with your front leg, you can see there's 2 cutouts. So the shorter cutout is your pocket cutout, and your longer cutout is for your crotch. And one thing that you could do that I just wanted to note here is that you could omit the whole pocket area by just cutting straight here and then continuing your angle until it meets. You also could, if you cut out on paper, you could lay your pocket pattern piece on top and line up your edge and your waistline here and just cut out a solid piece, and then you could omit the pocket, and that makes these a really quick sew if you do choose to do that. I do wish they had a line on the pattern just to make it easier to leave the pocket out. But with that, you're going to have 2 pocket backs. Now the pocket back is the part that you're going to see. So when I put this behind your pocket, I'm doing this fun stripe fabric for a little contrast. So that's the part you're going to see, is the bigger part. And then you have the front pocket here. You're going to have 2 opposites. I like to do this in just kind of scrap fabric because you don't see it. So I just use the selvage for my fabric, which is why these are white. Then you're going to have 2 cuffs. you're going to have a waistband, and then you're going to have the binding for the pocket. Now, I am not going to do binding. I'm going to do this as a band, and I'll show you how to do that. It's just a lot easier and a lot quicker. And you also could do the band without needing a sewing machine. And this pattern, or this piece, is not a pattern piece. It's just on a cut chart, which kind of bothers me because if you forget to do it, then you have to pull everything up and find the measurements. So I just measure my pocket curve and add about 1/2 inch. And even on the measurements, I do add some just to make it a little bit cleaner, which I will explain when we get to that step. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to add our pockets. So we are going to just take one front leg, and I'm only going to show you on one front leg, and then I'm going to do the other leg off camera because it's the exact same steps on the other leg. But we need one front leg. You're going to need one binding piece, and then you're going to need a pocket back, and there is a correct one for each leg. So you want the one that the straight side lines up with your straight side of your pants. You can see here, this one, if I laid it on top, the waist doesn't line up, and then this curves here. So that is for our other leg. So we want this pocket back, and then we don't need that. You're going to also want the pocket front, where when you lay them on top of each other with right sides together, the curve lines up and your straight side is over here. So the first thing we're going to do is our binding. Now, if you were doing the binding, you would lay your binding piece out flat, stretch it on here, sew it, and then you would flip it over and around and then top stitch it. But like I said, we are not doing the binding. So for the band, you're just going to fold your piece in half with wrong sides together. And I like to leave a little bit at the top when I attach it, which is why I said to add 1/2 inch. You're going to line up the raw edges here, and you can see here I left about 1/2 inch, and then I just go down to the other end and line it up. And again, I leave it hang over because the measurement is about perfect, and it does need to be stretched a little bit. And so when you do that, if you put this here, it kind of angles, and it makes it easy to not catch that when you stitch it. So I just always add a little bit to hang off so that I know I am catching this in my side seam when I sew it and don't have to worry about it. So we are just going to pin there, and then I just kind of stretch it and match up my middle point of this pocket curve. And you want to make sure you have all 3 layers in there lined up, and then you're just going to leave it like that, and then you're going to take your pocket front with right sides together, and you're going to line up your top seam first, and then just pop it into those pins with your band. Now the binding, you would do the same thing. You would sew the binding on flat with the pocket bag. I did forget to mention that, but then you would fold it over. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go over and we're going to sew along here, and you do want to stretch this slightly as you sew your band so that it is evenly stretched on your pocket front. All right, so I have this sewn, and as you can see, I have my band sandwiched in here, and here is that back seam. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to fold your pocket front over and under, and now you can see this nice little band. If you had the binding, you would fold it over and top stitch it. So here, if you don't have a sewing machine and you wanted to do this all on your serger, you could just leave it. I'd like to top stitch my seam allowance down along this edge. It just makes it lay much nicer and look more professional. So if you do have a sewing machine, I recommend doing that. I just use a long straight stitch on my sewing machine, nothing special, without any issues. So I'm going to go ahead and top stitch this down and be right back. All right, so I have this top stitch down now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to take my pocket bag, that's the wrong one, and I'm going to just match up. I'm going to flip this out actually so you can see my pocket here, and you're going to take your pocket bag and just line up the edge with the curved side. So we're not going to do anything with the top or the straight side right now. So just line up those raw edges and down here at the curve, and then all the way around the bottom. And so now you're just going to go and you're going to sew all the way down around this curve here. So I'm going to go sew that real quick and be right back. All right, so I went ahead and sewed that on, and as I mentioned, I went ahead and did the other pocket as well. So I now have both of my pockets ready, and you can see how this lays. You can kind of tuck it back in, and here, if you wanted to, you could flatten these out, and you want to basically get it so it's laying flat, and you could put a basting stitch in these edges here to hold them together. If you are uncomfortable or you just want to make it easier on yourself, you don't want to have to worry about it, go ahead and baste it. I always say, when in doubt, baste it out. So basting stitch you can always remove, and it is just makes it easier sometimes. I've done these enough and I'm comfortable that I just can put a pin in it to make it lay flat so that I don't have to worry about it when I'm sewing. I'm just going to put a pin in those. But now what we're going to do is we're going to flip these over with right sides together. We're going to line up this front crotch curve here, and we're also going to take out our back pieces while we're at it. We're going to put those right sides together and line up the back crotch curve as well, and pin those down, and then we're just going to go and we're going to sew down here and sew down there. So I'm going to go do that real quick and be back. All right, so we have those seams sewn. So now I'm going to open up my back piece here, and then I'm going to take my front piece and open it up, and with right sides together we're going to line up our side seams. Now this is why you may have wanted to baste this here, because what we're going to do is we're going to line up the edge of our pocket here and pin that, and then we're going to go all the way down. And when you get to here, you want to make sure that your pocket piece is laying nice and flat, and when you sew it doesn't get stitched down and folded over or anything like that. So you just want to make sure that your pocket piece is lined up, and you can see there, that's where my binding band piece is hanging off the edge so that I can make sure that I catch it. And then here we're just going to take this pin and move it. So you just want to make sure that this is all nice and flat along here where this pocket is, and that you're catching all of the edges, including this edge of your pocket. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers at the bottom of your pocket where you're sewing. Then you're just going to continue down, matching up your raw edges of your outside leg, and then you're going to repeat these same steps on this side here. Make sure you're not catching your binding there properly. And while I'm doing this, I will just say, as you can see here already, these do not line up. And that is perfectly fine. That's one of the biggest things I see people say. It's not even, that's because this is for your backside. The backside of your body is bigger, so the pattern piece needs to be bigger. The widths are not going to be equal on most patterns, and that is okay, so don't stress about that. You just pull this over and line it up, which we'll do here in the next step. But right now we're just going to go and sew down both of these side seams. All right, I got those side seams sewn up, and now, as I said, we can see that they are not even, and that's okay. So the first thing you want to do is go to the crotch seams and match those up. I like to nest them, meaning that this one is going to be folded that way, and my back seam is going to be folded this way, and that just helps reduce bulk. It also helps them kind of catch on each other so that they are lined up nicely as you sew over them. So I just start here and then work my way down, pulling that front so that the edges line up with each other. And you're going to work your way down to the ankle. And then you're going to work your way down the other side to the other ankle. And once you get this all pinned and ready to go, you're going to sew from one ankle to the other in one stitch. So you're just going to start down here, sew all the way around and down in one big stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and be right back. All right, so once you do that, you have the body of your pants done. So I'm going to set the pants aside for a second, and I'm going to take out my cuffs and my waistband. We're going to do these both at the same time. They are pretty much the same steps. So all you're going to do is you're going to take, this is the waistband, you can see, fold it in half and match up the short edge here. And then we're going to do the same thing with our cuffs. You're going to fold it in half, matching up the short edge. And for these, your grain line should be going up and down. If you're kind of thrown off on which way it goes, because it is a rectangle, but it's not, but the sides aren't too different, so your grain line should be going up and down. My stripes go with my grain line. So I'm going to do that on this one and pin those sides as well. And then you're just going to sew down all three of those. So I'm going to go do that real quick and be right back. All right, so now that we got all of those sewn up, we are going to attach our cuffs first. I'm going to set the waistband aside and one cuff. And just like with the pockets, I'm going to show you one cuff and then do the other one off camera because it's the same process. And the waistband is basically the same process, but there's a couple things I want to touch on. So we'll do that separately. So the first thing with your cuff is you want to take it, and I like to just come here, find my seam, and fold it in half and match up those seams like that with wrong sides together, and then fold it out and line up the raw edges, and I just kind of twist it until I get it laying nicely. And then I will just fold it in half with one fold at my seam, and then mark the other one here, and those are my half points. Now I'm just going to take my cuff. I like to take my seam and put it with my inseam seam, just so that it's not on the outside of my pants and it's nicely lined up. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that inseam, you're going to take your pant leg, and I prefer doing this with my pants inside out and inserting them. Some instructions will say to do it the other way and have the cuff on the outside. I find that really hard to do. So that's another way to try it. If you don't like this method, or if you don't like that method, you can try this method. But you're going to just match up those seams there, and then I'm going to match up this half point with my outside seam. And if you have a directional print, make sure that your print is going to be going the right way, because you don't want to sew it on and then have it going the wrong way. But you can see here that the cuff is a little bit smaller than my ankle, so I'm just going to stretch this slightly as I sew and sew all the way around it. And then that is all that you need to do with your cuff. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one and do the other one as well and be right back. All right, so I have my cuffs sewn on. You can see here I went ahead and did both of them. So now we're going to move to our waistband. So the waistband, the same thing. I like to just fold it in half at my seam. Oops. And for my waistband, I typically will put my seam either at the center back or match it up with my side seam. For these, I'm going to do my side seam. And so I'm just going to match up the seam there and pin it, and then I will just find my center point from here and match that up over here. Now your waistband should fit at a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning you don't need to stretch it, so you should be able to just kind of work your way along it and match up the raw edges without having to do any stretching. And then here where your pockets are, if you basted it, you shouldn't have to worry. If you did not baste it, just like we did on the sides, you want to be extra careful when you're pinning this, making sure that you catch both edges of your pocket and your binding or band when you are pinning this. So what I like to do if I didn't baste it is when I pin it, I'll just do one pin here at the edge of my pocket and then another pin right on top of my band or binding so that it stays in place and that I know to be extra careful as I sew. And then I just will take this over to my machine and I start a little bit in front of, or behind, I guess, however you want to look at it, my seam of my waistband, and then sew around so that I know that my seam on my waistband stays lined up with my side seam. Sew all the way around and then stop about 2 inches from where you started, because that's where we're going to insert our elastic into this casing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I have to run and pick up my son from school. So I will be back shortly to finish the rest of these pants, but we are almost done. All right, I am finally back, and I have my waistband sewn on. Here you can see here is where I left my hole for my elastic. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our elastic. I just kind of fold my waistband up, take our elastic, and before you cut your elastic, you want to stretch it. If you haven't done it, make sure you stretch it to the max and then remeasure it and cut it, because most likely your elastic won't be the same size. So what we're going to do is you're going to use a safety pin or whatever tool you would use. I use a bodkin, which is this little nifty guy. It's kind of like tweezers, and it's got these little teeth on it to grip the elastic, and it's a long, skinny, and this is by far my favorite tool for threading elastic in drawstrings. I mean, it has this rounded end, so it makes it real easy to slide it through. So then we're just going to stick your elastic into your casing and pull it around. You can see just how easy I'm doing this. Granted, I do have a lot of practice doing this, and just keep pulling it in. And I like to leave 4 or 5 inches out of my starting end, just so I don't accidentally pull it through. So right there is pretty good, and then I will just pop that out and kind of bunch up the waistband. You want to make sure that your elastic didn't twist in there, and pull this out. Take off your tool that you're using, and then you're just going to take your elastic and overlap it slightly, and with a long zigzag stitch you're going to go up and down. I just go up and down this a couple times. I'll go down and then back stitch all the way up and down. 2, maybe 3 times I usually do it, and again with a long wide zigzag stitch. I didn't say a wide one. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this and be right back. Alright, so I got my elastic sewn, and you can see there that zigzag stitch. And then you're just going to pull your waistband so that your elastic pops in, and we're going to fold this back down, and we're going to take this back over to our machine and just sew our hole closed here. You just want to make sure that when you do that, that your elastic is out of the way and it doesn't catch when you sew. So what I like to do a lot of times is I will just kind of fold it in half and either put a pin or a clip just up here just to hold it out of the way, and then sew this seam shut, and then I'll just take that off, and then your elastic will be nice and flat. All right, so I sewed that hole shut there, and then I just take my elastic off, and there we go. And then you could be done here if you wanted to, but I would recommend at the very least to tack down your elastic. So what that means, if you don't, I know I talked about doing these without a sewing machine, and so if you don't have a sewing machine, then you could do it by hand. You would just go in a couple places and just put in a little stitch that goes all the way through your elastic, and that just keeps your elastic from flipping. I'm sure you've had a pair of pants or something where the elastic just flips and twists and it's just not comfortable. So that helps prevent that. If you use a sewing machine, I would just go and kind of stitch, same thing, just a couple places, maybe even just on the sides to hold that elastic in place. 2 places should be good enough to keep it from twisting. But if you do have a sewing machine or a cover stitch, you could do this with a cover stitch, you're going to want to top stitch your elastic. Now you don't have to do it, but it really elevates the final look of your pants. Top stitching that waistband, it makes it look so professional, so store-bought. And there is a little bit of finesse to it. I'm not going to get into all of the details here, but you are just going to want to take this and you're going to stretch your elastic and sew. I do have a full video tutorial on how to top stitch an elastic waistband, which I will put a link in the description. So make sure you check that out, and I will walk you through all of the steps, all of the settings on how to do it to get a phenomenal looking waistband after it's top stitched. I usually just do 2 rows of top stitching, and unless I have a really wide waistband, you know, then I might do 3, but I just try to evenly space them. And you just want to make sure that you're stretching your elastic all the way from the front and back and front and behind your presser foot. Now you don't want to stretch it and yank it through your presser foot. You want to just, I stretch it and kind of lift it up and just kind of guide it and let the feed dogs do the work. But you want your fabric and surface to be flat and evenly stretched. So once you do that, then you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and get this waistband top stitched and finish these up. All right, so once you top stitch the waistband or tack your elastic down, you're done. And you can just see like how professional and how much nicer this waistband looks now that it's top stitched. And it just really pulls the whole look together. Now, the other thing you could do if you wanted to is you could add a fake drawstring here, which to do that you just cut a string and then in the center you tack it down. I don't really like putting drawstrings on my kids' clothes. They just don't stay tied. I personally don't like drawstrings on my stuff. I just find them annoying, so I don't do that, but that is always an option to do. And you can just see I love this. I just love this fabric and how it looks, but you can just see all the details in the pocket and the waistband. And this pattern, like I said, is just my absolute favorite all around pant pattern for any little kids. So if you are in doubt and you need something for anyone, or you want to do matching from like baby to kids, this is a great pattern for that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below and I would be happy to help. Even if it's not about this pattern, anything just sewing in general, feel free to leave a comment and reach out. Make sure you also subscribe to my channel so that you're notified of future videos. I do have a bunch of other tutorials on patterns and just sewing techniques and things like that, so you can check those out in my channel as well. Or you can find me on Instagram. It's at Sewbex. It's SEWBEXX, and you can reach out to me there. I also share a lot of educational content and just things that I'm working on there. But I hope that you found this video helpful to sew up your joggers. And also, if you sew them up and share them on Instagram, I would love, love, love for you to tag me so that I can see your creation that I helped make. I just love seeing the things that you guys make, especially when I know that I had a little tiny part on sewing up your creation. Thanks for watching. Bye.